The 2014 U.S. Chess Championships have experienced some major shakeups, and there are several key players who are responsible. Sam the Spoiler Shanklin played a merciless game against tournament leader Varuja. And Alexander the Hitman Lenderman plowed through Daniel Naroditsky to put himself back on top with Varuja. A lot still to be sorted out, and it's all live right now at the 2014 U.S. Chess Championships. Hello and welcome to the 2014 U.S. Chess Championships and U.S. Women's Championships here in St. Louis, the capital of chess in America. We are in the beautiful Central West End, right across the street from the World Chess Hall of Fame at the St. Louis Chess Club, the club that Gary Kasparov, who will be joining us later in the show, called the nicest chess club in the world. And we are actually having our 6th straight U.S. Chess Championship. As we see, the women today are taking a day off. So the U.S. Championship, we've got Gary Kasparov and Akobian. They are about to make their moves. This is going to be another thrilling round. We always expect excitement in the penultimate round. I'm Jennifer Shahadi, and I'm here with Grandmaster Yasser Seirawan.
Pleasure to be with you, Jen, again.
Let's take a look at the standings, which, as we mentioned earlier, really shook up yesterday. We've got tied at the top, Varuja Akobian and Alexander Lenderman. Both of them have a lot of wins, right? This isn't like a draw tournament, right? Big scores, big wins. And neither of them we would expect it to be in this position in the beginning of the tournament. Right behind them, defending champion Gary Kasparov. Another surprise, Friedel also won 5.5 within striking distance.
And the lowest player in the field at that.
That's right. And we've got Grandmaster Maurice Ashley with us, as usual, and he has some thoughts on that key matchup of the day.
Well, indeed, Jen, it is the penultimate round of the championships. When that's the case in any tournament, players know they've got to put their game face on because they want to perform strong today in preparation for tomorrow's game. And this pairing, a fantastic one for the tournament. You have Varuja Akobian at 6 points. He was running away with it with 4 wins in a row before getting beaten badly yesterday by Sam Shanklin. And chasing him, the 4-time champ, Gary Kasparov, on 5.5. He needs to put together probably a couple of wins or at least a victory today to have a chance. If Akobian wins, Gary Kasparov will be mathematically eliminated from the tournament sitting at 5.5 points. And then in another key matchup, you have Alexander Lenderman playing against a tail-ender, Mackenzie Molnar, who has not even won a game today. Alex has been incredible, winning 3 games out of the first 5, leading the tournament initially, then losing 2, looking like he was flagging, and then back in business by winning 2 in a row. A win today would put him at a gorgeous 7 points as well, and his situation looks like he's sitting pretty. He wants a victory, and this could be a chance at the U.S. Championship and even a spot on the Olympic team. So, indeed, a fighting matchup today. We see Gary Kasparov, if he has 5.5, he wins. It shows that the tournament is anybody's tournament at 6.5, with Varuja chasing him at 6 with 1 round to go. And the tail ender, Josh Friedel, he's the lowest rated player in the competition, also sitting at 5.5 points. A win against the very dangerous Sam Shanklin would put him at 6.5, and then it's all to play for in the last round. So a lot of potential scenarios. We're analyzing quite a few more of them, including one where there might be a 6-way tie at 6.5 in the championships at the end of it, but those odds are unlikely. I don't know what the bookies would say about them, but certainly an exciting round coming up today at the championships. Guys?
Definitely. I see today as the showdown, and Gary Kasparov, defending champion, really will have to go all out today if he wants to keep his championship title.
Now let's take a look at the opening in that game. What has happened? It seems that we've got some kind of
it would appear to
be
some
kind of Dutch, right?
A Dutch defense. And let me just take you
through
that's
the
cool.
That's
move.
Not, I mean, that's not what we expected. We always expect Gada to choose from one of his 2 big standbys, right? The Grunfeld and the Slav.
Which really goes to show that Gata knew that he was going to have to mix it up, get VAR out of his preparation. F7, F5 is not standard in Gata's repertoire, and shows that he's playing for a win.
Well, you don't have to be a math genius,
yes.
but you might have to be a chess genius to beat Varakovian with black. And
exactly.
So certainly Gata fits the bill.
A big ask.
Actually, the amazing thing is sometimes these guys who are chess geniuses seem like they're really bad at math.
That when they need to go all out, they play cautiously type of deal.
Or yeah, they're just like a little. They don't do the calculations really fast. Like that's the thing though. Chess doesn't actually have a lot of math in it, does it?
No. But
it's more visual spatial skills.
Yeah.
So if you want to call it math, more geometry, not calculating.
That's right. But in terms of the cross table, well, you don't need.
Obvious.
Yes, you got to win. So F7, F5 today by Gata. I mean, it's a well-known defense. It's kind of considered a secondary defense. You take a lot of risks by allowing your opponent to build up a center. But F5 does have several positive attributes about it. Everybody likes to control the E4 square, and by playing F7, F5 early, oftentimes it leads to some kind of kingside initiative. All right, Knight C3. Oh, pardon me. Let me just, oh, what have I got? Yeah, there we go. Knight C3 by VAR, a secondary move. Basically, everybody has played C2, C4 in this position. And Knight C, oops, I beg your pardon. Knight C3, the idea behind Knight C3 is to play for a quick E2, E4, and Gata shut that down at once with the move D7, D5, again controlling the E4 square. Now there's like the Marshall Gambit, where you can go for E4 anyway, but this specific gambit that I have in mind has really been worked out to a situation that black fares well. So E4 early, E4 immediately, pardon me, I wouldn't expect that move. Here, VAR could play the move bishop G5, trying to provoke the move H7, H6 and drop back with the bishop so that the square G6 is weakened.
And VAR's actually still thinking on this third move?
Right, still thinking on, well, actually I think he's actually made a move.
No, he has played bishop to F4.
He played bishop F4 immediately. I like the move bishop G5 with the idea of provoking H6 and then bishop F4. I like the idea of weakening the square G6, but bishop F4 was VAR's
now, maybe
choice.
Kamsky also liked the Dutch because he saw how tentative VAR was and kind of the massive time pressure. You know, he also played the Dutch in a game against Ludwig in the World Cup. And that was, you know, those 2-game matches. So he probably didn't want to go into the Blitz playoff. Instead, so he was kind of playing. They drew the first game.
Yeah,
he
it's
drew
important
with white,
to see. Yeah.
And then he wanted to win the match outright rather than to go into playoffs.
Exactly.
So he played for a win with black and won a Dutch defense.
All right. Very nice.
Against John Ludwig Hammer, who's come up before in the broadcast because he's also a good friend of Sam Shankland's.
Right, and had been his second, as well as working for Magnus Carlsen as his second.
And we've got Maurice with something from, speaking of the devil, Sam Shankland and Josh Friedell's game. Josh Friedell doing fantastically, and Sam also coming off a win.
Something slightly strange is going on in this game, and just take a look, and you can come up with your theories about it. In this position, actually, let's just go to the opening itself. Sam played this move, Josh played this move D4, a known pawn sacrifice in this position after C takes D4, knight to B5, and the threat to play knight to D6 wins back this pawn just about no matter what. So D5, dealing with the knight D6 check threat, CD5, ED5, castles, and knight GE7. These moves were played very quickly. Then after the move bishop F4, threatening the fork on C7, black simply castled, and in this position you expect maybe knight takes on D4, maybe this knight on B5, move like queen D2. Instead, the strange move, knight to C7, attacking the rook, and after rook to B8, knight back to B5. Now, an odd sequence here, of course, rook back to A8, a tacit offer of a draw. Sam Shankland is in no place to not repeat moves here. He has to, but Josh Friedell is only a half a point out of first, and you would think he'd want to win with the white pieces. So is he looking for a draw this early in the competition? Well, it's not even allowed by the rules. You're not supposed to take a repetition in the opening. You're supposed to play to at least 30 moves, and it looks as though he has deviated. He's now played the move queen to d2. So what was that little shuffle about, maybe gaining a couple of moves on the clock this early in the game? You know, let me get 30 seconds on the increment. Very bizarre way to begin a chess game here at the championships. Guys?
Well, yeah, I said I was going to eat, not my hat, but Josh Friedl's hat if he took a draw.
Oh, wow.
No way was he going to do that. White pieces in this tournament standings, that would be that would be beyond, like, shameful. That would just be bizarre. It would be insane.
Well, I mean,
We
a
would never
chance
do
to
it.
win the national
No.
championship, you got to go for it. How many opportunities is Josh going to have coming into the tournament as the lowest rated seeded player, qualifying? He didn't come through the rating. He won the U.S. Open, United States Open to get here, and here he has an opportunity to win the national championship. This is huge. Making a repetition, no, I don't think so. I don't think so. But anyway, just to, should I bring that game up on my screen, Jen? Or
Yeah, sure.
Oops, I don't.
We should also check in on Lenderman when we get a chance.
Oh, let me check in on Lindemann, because that is such a key game in today's round.
Now let me point out again that we have a very special guest coming in with us at around 2:30 Central Standard Time. That's 3:30 East Coast time. Gary Kasparov will be joining Maurice to talk about the future of chess in America, his FIDE presidential campaign, and the games.
Absolutely.
So if you have any questions, hashtag US Chess Champs, and you might even be able to hear the great legend answer it. So
Exactly.
you got just a little bit of time, but be sure you don't go anywhere and tell your friends. So what do we have here in the Moner Lenderman game? A very key game for the standings.
Well, Mac has repeated the same opening French defense, or I should even say Lenderman, as what we saw in an earlier game in the tournament between Ramirez as white, Alex Lenderman as black, and in that game, Lenderman's preparation proved fantastic as he won with the black pieces against Alejandro Ramirez. So we have a repeat of that game. Again, just to remind, knight f6 was what was played by Lenderman, and we saw this trade. So both players still early in their opening preparation here, and let's move on to another game.
Now, Moner does have they've had a lot of decisive results between the two of them, but I think as Lenderman pointed out, both of them are kind of totally different players. They're both very young. So both in their early 20s, games from 2009, not necessarily that relevant.
Right.
Both of them weren't even grandmasters at the time.
Exactly. Exactly.
So they've really gained most of their style and class in the last few years, and therefore Lenderman said he wasn't really thinking too much about their previous battles.
Exactly.
Although, but for the record, Moner won a game with white in the Carol Khan defense, and he also won a game as black in the Grunfeld. Lenderman won one as white in the Bogo Indian. So those are some of their more recent decisive games. None of those openings, of course, have appeared on the board.
Quite a mixture of openings and defenses, I might add. Okay, so Josh Friedel, an outsider, doing his best, playing against, as Maurice said, very dangerous opponent,
And a
Sam
friend.
Shanklin.
I mean, they used to both live in the Bay Area.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, Josh now
They know
both
each other quite well, yeah. So we see a symmetrical English opening, knight f3, e7, e6. So the idea from Black's point of view is he'd like to post his knight on e7 and keep an eye on this d4 square for a very common maneuver of moving the knight on g8 to take advantage of the d4 square. Josh was having none of that and played d2, d4, as mentioned by Maurice, a known opening gambit. And all of these moves have been seen many times. Bishop f4, castles, knight c7, rook, knight. And now we have the move queen d2. Okay, so the stage is set here. What white is trying to do is recapture the pawn on d4 in the nicest ways. First, he connects his rooks and leaves it open as to whether he's going to play rook c1 or rook d1. Now, at first sight, it might appear very attractive to play the move queen b6. Not only does the queen defend the pawn on d4, a very good thing, but it also attacks the knight on b5. The knight on b5 must be protected, and you play a move like a2, a4. Now, once again, it might appear very attractive to try to attack this knight and kick it away from the d4 pawn, but then black gets into a little bit of trouble in a variation like I'm showing, where the queen gets booted around. Eventually, the queen has to go to b4, and after trades, white can pick up this knight on d4, put his bishop on d6. This is ideal for white. So queen b6, an attractive-looking move, is actually inaccurate. The move that I think Sam should really be giving a lot of consideration to, if he hasn't already made his move, is the move knight f5, defending the pawn on d4. And let me again just make sure I'm up to date with the players, because it does appear like Sam has made his choice, which was bishop g4, actually. Developing a piece, we go back to the situation after queen d2, bishop g4, developing his bishop, attacking the knight on f3, threatening to capture it, and then maintain the pawn on d4. Now Josh had no choice. He did capture, or recaptured the pawn on d4 and queen b6. Very natural-looking move, putting pressure on the d4 knight. This bishop on g7, the fianchetto bishop, is an ambush, eyeballing the pawn on b2 in conjunction with the pawn, the queen on b6 attacking b2. Feels very easy game at the moment that black has already, let us say, equalized the situation and doesn't have that many problems.
Why do you think that he played this opening? I mean, doesn't Josh usually play 1e4?
I think we're going to have to ask him. I don't. I can't even.
I mean, of course, as we know, we've mentioned it before, and a lot of other, a lot of great players mention Shankland as being really well prepared. I can't remember where I read it, but I think maybe it was Gustafsson on Chess24 who said, like, Shankland's known for his great preparation.
Yeah, he works very hard on his openings, no question.
So perhaps that was one of the reasons he's playing something more offbeat. But yeah, we'll do a little more thought into that. Another surprising opening, as we mentioned earlier, I guess not that surprising, because Gary Kasparov has played this Dutch in a couple of recent important games, and including one in the Sinkfield Cup.
Yes,
he played this against Aronian.
Right, but yes, exactly.
That was a different line. Aronian played with c4, knight c3. He didn't play with the knight going in front of the c-pawn like Kobian did.
Right.
Rather. But the game was a draw, and that was a tough tournament for Gary Kasparov in the Sinkfield Cup. He came in last, but he had a couple of really memorable fights.
Oh, without question. All the games were really hard fought. Just a little bit surprising by I'm taken aback by Gada's last move. After the move bishop f4, Gada played e7, e6, preparing to develop this dark squared bishop, either to b4 perhaps, or more commonly d6 or e7 squares. And then after e2, e3, a formation known as the Dutch Stonewall for the better part of 150 years is to play c7, c6. These pawns offer black a very solid grip in the center.
Now, what about that knight on c3?
Exactly.
Normally, we don't like our knight on c3 in this type of position.
For sure. That's why c2, c4, and move 2 is so common. The knight on c3 feels a little bit uncomfortable in front of the c2 pawn.
And that's true for those of you who are more beginner. That's true for a lot of d4, c4 openings. But in the Dutch, it's an exception. It's a little bit more popular because of those quick e4 lines that you were discussing.
Exactly. Now, c7, c6 is really the most common move. And another point behind the move c6, not only to defend the d5 pawn, but actually to stop any knight prancing, knight b5, knight c7, for example, like in the game between Josh Friedel and Sam Shankland. So c7, c6 would be by far the most expected move. Gada actually played a7, a6. This intimates that he's that he's preparing to break into the center with the move c7, c5. I don't like this move a6 in this specific position, and the reason is because I think g2, g4 is an excellent way for white to attack the pawn on f5. I played g2, g4 against Alex Yermolinsky in a U.S. championship many, many years ago and got a very good game as white.
Do you think Jacobian's aware of that game? Or of this move?
Yeah, he should be. He certainly has seen that.
Oh, but he hasn't made the move before. In fact, he played quickly.
Yes.
So certainly still aware of the opening position. And actually, Gada's results with F5 have been quite strong. I mean, I mentioned the win against Hammer. He also beat Kazimjanov with the Dutch, and Bacro, Gelfand.
That's quite a nice
list
of names. It's not such a big surprise, maybe, that he chose the Dutch
for a critical round,
for a key round,
yeah,
where he has to
more double-edged. Because the problem with the Grunfeld, even though it's double-edged, there are some lines where white can really simplify matters a lot. Some queen trade lines.
Absolutely, a long line of forcing variations and drawn. So maybe Gado felt that his chances, if he needs to win, would not lie in the Grunfeld, because white can make a draw.
That's right. Well, yeah. We saw how that worked out yesterday for Anna Zatonsky. Of course, playing black, it makes it a lot harder. He also had a win with black, and not quite as big of a name, but perhaps a big future name, with Caden Trofe. And Caden is one of the members of the Rising Stars program, which is a partnership between the Kasparov Chess Foundation and the St. Louis Chess Club. And of course, we are going to have Gary Kasparov on the show in the next hour, and it'll be interesting to hear his thoughts on some of those rising stars, which include Trofe and Sam Savion. In fact, you see a lot of their pictures on the wall here. Jeffrey Chang.
A wonder, Jeffrey. And just to explain a little bit more about what that I kind of think of them as all-stars program is like. First of all, Gary himself hosts a summer camp about 5 days long, where all of these players in the all-star program come to St. Louis and have a coaching sessions the whole day. Also, during the year, Gary and his team will be sending thoughts and ideas, problems, homework for the kids to be working on as well. So it's a very hands-on, interactive program, and just the idea of working with Gary Kasparov, I mean, I would have just thrilled me to bits.
Yeah, these kids are pretty lucky.
I mean, lucky he doesn't even come close.
Alejandro Leong, I don't think is actually part of the program, but he is doing amazingly lately, and he was recently just on the cover of Chess Life magazine in this adorable photo where he's in this not his high school, right? He's like 11, right?
Right, junior high or
when
something.
When he's school in front of all his classmates with his medals and trophies.
I'm sorry, I stand corrected. I thought at the summer camp, I was actually here with Gary and watched him interact with the kids.
I could be wrong. I'll get confirmation. But yeah, I know that Caden and Sam are part of it.
Oh, that's clear. And Sarah Chung from Texas, yeah.
So really a great group of kids. And yeah, we'll be really looking forward to hearing from Gary. You can participate in the show too. # US Chess Champs or comments at stlouischessclub.org. And you can get a free membership to chess.com. Juniors can receive a gold membership to chesskid.com. And perhaps the biggest prize of the day on offer, you may get a question answered by Gary Kasparov. So that will give you some good bragging rights.
Yeah, get your questions ready. In our showdown in St. Louis game here between Jacobian and Kamsky, I'm just looking, you know, it's a funny thing. We all tell starting players that it's absolutely vital to develop your pieces early, control the center, get a safe king, and so forth and so on. One of the things I'm looking at this position as white, and I'm not really attracted to white's setup, is if you look at the bishop on d3, it really isn't effective. This pawn on f5 blocks that diagonal, the pawn on a6 blocks that diagonal, and there are even ideas for black of playing c5, c4. Let me just make a bad move for white for just a moment to show how something could go very, very wrong very early here in this game. After the move bishop b4, absolute pin against the king, Black has threatening to play knight e4, but a deeper issue in the position for white is that his light square bishop on e2 is really ineffective. So I'm not a big fan of Akobian's early opening play, and I think Black has actually equalized, and if I was forced to choose whose position I like more, I'd rather play Black's.
All right, and you'd probably rather be Kamsky as well with those list of victims with white. I mean, that's an impressive list.
Without question. That's
Boris Gelfand.
Yeah, top 10.
Kazimjanov, world champion, World Cup champion.
Former world champion Kazimjanov, absolutely, yeah. Wow, that is a great list of names to be sure. Also, just to continue the thought for a moment, if you were to capture castles, knight c6, again, it looks to me that Black's position is more flexible. He's playing for e6, e5. This knight on c3 is misplaced. White would want to be able to counter in the center with c2, c4, which would necessitate a knight retreat from c3 to, say, e2 before you could play c4. So Gada's opening choice spot on in this key game.
So somebody asked at our hashtag US Chess Champs, when will Grandmaster Sarawan start Twittering so we can follow his insights all year long?
Oh my.
He actually said tweeting. I'm just using Yasserism, Twittering.
Twittering?
We did have Yasserisms earlier on one of the earlier show. That was really hilarious.
Twittering. I've never really gotten into the whole Facebook social network. Just too much to do in life to really get into it. So it's probably not going to happen anytime soon.
But if it is, you know, probably it'll be at GMYAS.
Something like that. We did see in the game between Josh Friedel and Sam Shanklin, we did see Josh, after the move queen b6, which I thought was a very good move, by the way, just connecting the rooks and setting up for pressure on the d4 and b2 pawn. What Josh did is he had to protect his knight on c3. He dropped back with his bishop to e3, menacing discoveries against Black's queen. And
we'd certainly love to take that bishop on g7 with a knight.
Right.
That would be positional crash. So queen a6 was played.
Queen a6, getting out of the range of the dark squared bishop, putting pressure on the a2 pawn as well as the e2 pawn. And then we saw Josh trade knights with the move knight takes c6. And again, I'm thinking that the isolated pawn with this nice bishop isn't that big a deal after knight takes c6. I don't really think that white has any opening advantage at all, and I think that Black is equalized very easily. Whereas
so knight takes c6, you're not worried about the pawn because just bishop takes b2 and we're...
Well, after queen takes d5, well, first of all, I could take this pawn on b2, but I could also, I have the choice of queen takes e2 as well, just equalizing the pawn structure after queen takes
and threatening
e2.
rook d8 and rook e8.
And threatening queen b2 as well. So I don't, this trade of queen takes d5 eliminates a weak, slightly weak pawn.
And Black's pieces are more active.
Exactly. So I just think that Black in this game has equalized early and stands well.
So an opening experiment by White gone wrong.
Yeah, that's fair. Whereas I was just wanted to say that after B takes c6, then my interest in White's position actually gets a little bit better. I like this bishop sitting over here on c5. I like the idea of a knight coming to d4 and pressuring c6, and then after a move like e2, e3 as well. White gets in all of those maneuvers. He's going to have a comfortable advantage. So I think Sam's recaptured knight takes c6 is required.
You've been all about the captures on c6 at this tournament, right?
Yeah? Why?
I was thinking about the one you weren't happy with, the Ramirez game.
Oh, that was already painful. Yes, yeah. Bad. That was really, what a wild game.
Well, weaker players, I mean, amateur players make so many mistakes when it comes to captures, but it seems that it's even true at the highest levels. Why do you think that is?
Well, because you're doing this constant judgment call, like when is a bishop better a knight? When is the knight better than the bishop? When can we sacrifice the exchange? And you're constantly trying to decipher whose pieces are more active and whose pieces are more passive, and making those trades. Just a simple, nuanced pawn move can alter what you previously believed was an active piece, and it's almost like after each move you have to not necessarily recalculate, but recalibrate your judgment as to which pieces are better than the other ones.
Oh, that's a great point. I guess a lot of players, since you're known for being like such a great strategic player, a lot of players, when captures come into the position, they're all about tactics. So they miss some of those strategic things.
Ideas,
and all the changes that you mentioned in the position, different pieces opening and whatnot.
Right. And
of course, that is kind of what happened in the Ramirez game.
Precisely.
The move that was played gained a tempo, whereas the other move was just, Ramirez is a great player, so if you took him and asked him which structure he would prefer, I'm sure he would know.
Without consideration. So, of course, of course you should play b takes c6.
But in time pressure, the tactics kind of overtake you.
Yeah, and you get sidetracked, and sometimes, really, it has happened to me that I played a game I was either proud of or unhappy with, really carefully analyzed it, and I said to myself, was that really me playing those moves? I mean, and I was just about to say, although I think Lenderman is the most decisive player in the tournament, Timur Gariev has certainly had his ups and downs, and I think he'll be scratching his head after this event saying, did I really play that move in that game and that move in that game? Unrecognizable in certain moments. And let me just continue.
That blindfold chess.
I know. Tell about Timur's blindfold ability there.
Oh, Timur Gariev has done some amazing blindfold feats. He's played, I think, 30 boards at once here at the chess club.
33.
33.
Yeah, it's incredible to watch. I mean, it went from about 8 in the morning to about 6 in the evening, and keeping such a high level of concentration for all of those hours really is, you can't believe what you're watching.
Well, the thing is, there's a lot of heated debate whether if you take a person and you train them really hard, will they be able to become a very strong chess player? And I think a lot of people think the answer is yes. But I'm not so sure if you train somebody really hard, will they be able to play 20 blindfold games simultaneously? It might be a special gift.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I mean, you can do remarkable things with training. A well-trained mind is capable of unbelievable things. But the blindfold, 30 games blindfold, the idea that you could train somebody to do that, I find that really hard to believe. It's some kind of natural gift, how your brain is wired, to be able to do that. That's just phenomenal.
Yeah, definitely a genius. And what's going on at our opening with Mackenzie Molnar and Alexander Lenderman? We kind of changed from a position that almost looks like it's a Sicilian.
Okay, let's see. Yes. Well, again, this is a repeating of the game between Ramirez and Lenderman from earlier in the tournament. In this position, there's a number of moves for white to play. Bishop b3, b2, b3, protecting the bishop, queen e2. All have had lots of games. Bishop d3 was played, and I believe the simple knight f6 is what we're going to see from Alex.
And we've got Maurice with a game that we haven't looked at yet today, and that's the one between Ramirez and Robson.
Well, Jen, just something struck my fancy as I was looking at games. First of all, the game that we saw with Friedel versus Shanklin. And we saw from this position in the opening, let me just get that away. In the opening, we saw this setup after a few moves. We got to this position after the move e6 was played, right? So just freeze this position in your mind, if you will. Think blindfold chess, both knights, bishops, knights and fianchetto. And now switch over, let's switch over to the game between Ramirez and Robson. And they were following this exact same position up to this point. And it was the same position on the board after the move knight to c3. Exact same position. Now, already by now, Friedel had already sacrificed his pawn against Shanklin. He had already played this move, knight to b7, knight to c7, chasing the rook around. So I started wondering, would they follow that path as well? But instead, Ramirez decided, that is, Robson decided to play the move e5, not allowing this pawn sacrifice at all, going into a totally different position. And in response to this aggressive pawn move, an aggressive pawn move of his own did Ramirez, which is the move h4, looking to tickle the black king's potential residence on this side. Quite a committal move as early as move 6 in the opening. Yeah, as all the classical principles, how do you explain it to students these days when players are pushing pawns on the wing, willy-nilly, sacrificing pawns, making repetitious piece moves? I mean, it's not like the old days. I'm sure Capablanca will be turning over in his grave. Guys?
Yeah, h4 would certainly be a move that Kappa would frown upon. But Bent Larson, my personal chess hero, would have loved it. Bent Larson was a player who loved to advance his flank pawns, his A and H pawn, just to disrupt his opponent's comfort zone. And obviously in the game of Alejandro Ramirez, that's what he's trying to do against Ray Robson. He knows that Ray just wants to develop his knight to e7 in safety. So h5, just to disturb, you know, mix it up.
Was he the same guy who always said that a knight on g6 is always bad?
No.
I was like, that would fit well together.
Right. Bent was the guy who said that, and when I have a knight on f8, I never get mated.
Ah, right. Well, especially if you're playing h4, h5, and cranking the file open.
Exactly.
And we are going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back with you for more from the U.S. Championships here in St. Louis.
Hi, I'm Lindsay, part of the admissions team here at Paul Mitchell School St. Louis. Our campus is located on Maryland Plaza, right here in the gorgeous Central West End.
I chose Paul Mitchell, the school St. Louis, because I visited other schools, and when I was at them, I just felt like the energy level wasn't the same. It wasn't as elevated as it is here. When I came here, it just felt right. Everybody looked great. Everybody had such a great attitude. The facility was really clean and just so much more advanced.
Technology can truly enhance your education. When we brought in Chromebooks and we started using the smart TVs, we really tapped into the 21st century learner.
Being a student at Paul Mitchell is great because the learning leaders, they're there to guide you in the right direction. They give you the opportunity to make decisions on your own.
They accept you for who you are, and they're always welcome and honest and open.
We have encouraged our guests to post Google reviews. So far to date, have over 100 reviews with an average rating of 4.5 stars.
So I like that this isn't just for hair and beauty, but it's also a business college. You can learn hair, you can brush it, you can tease it, you can learn all of that, but to do business, that's something that really takes a whole different level of education.
Whether we're in the classroom or at the color bar, we're always having a great time at Paul Mitchell, the school St. Louis.
Being a student at Paul Mitchell gives you a lot of opportunity for when you're ready to get out into the real world.
Thank you for taking a sneak peek of our campus, and we can't wait for you to come and see what a Paul Mitchell education can do for you.
Welcome back to the 2014 U.S. Chess Championships. Look, that hat is playing on its own.
Where?
Josh Friedl's hat, it's playing on its own.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay, I was just going to say that following up on the game between Ramirez and Robson, there's a nice trap in the position that if you're not familiar with, it's a pattern worth knowing. I'm just going to bring this game up on our screen, and we see this move h4 by white, menacing a potential h5. And what black usually responds with is h7, h6, as did Robson. The idea is that in case of h5, black bypasses this h-pawn with the move g5. Fair enough. So what white does is play d2, d3, and then, oops, I beg your pardon, I'm going to take that back for a second. So what happened after h6 is white Alejandra played d3, and then what happens is, say, knight e7, bishop d2, castles. And all of black's moves have been very natural. White plays the move queen c1, gift me the pawn on h6. Black's king is induced to go king h7, protecting the pawn, and this is a trap that a lot of players on the black side have fallen for. h4, h5, threatening to capture on h6 as well as g6. Black plays the move g5, and suddenly, bam! Bishop sacrifice. Bishop takes on g5, h takes g5, knight takes g5, check. Oh dear, where are you going to go with your king?
Well, if we go to h6, it's pinning itself, so
right,
walking in disco attacks.
Exactly, walking in. And if you go, for example, to g8, then the move h6, bishop drops back to h8, and you've got potentials of
got knight e6 and queen h6 coming
check,
in, huh?
And
so if if f takes e6,
queen check, king goes over, queen check, king goes over. And is this a rover position? I think this could be a rover position. Not sure.
Or a bover.
Rook up and over.
Well, I was also thinking of perhaps, I wanted to try to get my bishop into the game as well, but this seems faster.
Well, with bishop e4. These are traps that black, just to go back to the initial pattern, this bishop takes g5, h takes g5, knight takes g5. These have been very, very severe attacks for the black player. So playing natural moves like from the game position, just a moment, playing natural moves, oops, I want to go to the game position, can get you into trouble. Again, the way we got that variation was bishop d2, castles, queen c1, king h7, and the move h5. Black has actually put his king right into a scorching attack. So Ray has got to be careful. And let's go back to our key game of the round, Varuzhin Akobian. He actually has played that variation that I actually looked at a moment ago, where I said I didn't like his play, White's play with his bishop on d3, that he was going to have to do something.
No, you like the more aggressive g4 earlier in this opening.
Absolutely, because I think that basically with this move, White is playing for c2, c4, and essentially what I see White is trying to do is equalize the position. I don't see any...
And as White, of course, that's not what should be on tap.
Of course not.
We've got some more comments coming in at our hashtag US Chess Champs. Mark Twick, of course, from the Week in Chess, Mark Crowther, who's also a great tweeter. He's always got all the information for you on major tournaments and major PRs. So definitely follow him for information. He says that I always think of Leonid Stein's 1-0 Smyslov Russian Team Championship tournament from 1972 when people talk about early H-pawn pushes. See, I told you he had a lot of information up his sleeve.
Absolutely.
We also had a question yesterday that I wanted to kind of add to. Somebody was asking about the measures we have against cheating at the St. Louis Chess Club, and we were talking about how strict they are. I also just read an article that's going to be coming out in Chess Life magazine in a few weeks about an cheating algorithm by Ken Reagan.
Right.
And it, tries to study the moves and compare the rating. You know about this algorithm.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, it's kind of a snooper software to analyze games and to see how often moves compare with chess engines and whether whether a player's rating would justify a large number of moves being similar. So the idea of Ken software is to really put the kibosh on somebody cheating only just for a little while, not simply cheating in the entire game, right? You might say, oh, I've got to mix up my moves a little bit. But if somebody is cheating at periods of the game, is what Ken is trying to also stop.
Right, and it sounds like you really need a large sample size in order to analyze all this data.
The more data you have, the easier, the system would work.
And there's a really in-depth story on that in the June Chess Life magazine, so take a look out for that. And that's by Howard Godowski.
Yeah, and by the way, just a shout out to Ken, Professor Ken Regan, played in my first U.S. Junior Championship together in Memphis, Tennessee, back in 1976. John Fedorowicz, Nick DeFermian, Michael Rode, Jonathan Tisdall. It was a great tournament. Basically, everybody in the event titled. Mark Deason was the winner, went on to become the world junior champion in that particular year.
There's another famous Ken Rogoff, who's a grandmaster. Who's now a grandmaster, Ken Rogoff, and he actually just was in the mainstream press. He wrote an article about the bubble bursting in China. It kind of compared his chess. Well, I guess the interviewer compared his chess career and his thoughts on China and economics. So it's really kind of fascinating. I encourage you to check that out.
And Ken, of course, is a professor of economics, Harvard International Money Fund chief economist, and chess grandmaster, of course.
And one of my favorite quotes from the article is, "I'm very addicted to chess. I still think about it," Ken says, even though he has only played a handful of games in 30 years. "I'm trying to check it. I'm not thinking about it right now." He adds, making me think that really he is.
Yeah, no, I mean, once you're bitten by the chess bug, you always have an interest in what's going on. And I know Ken has had an exceptionally busy life, but what little time he has, he still tries to stay informed, let's say. I just was noticing that Sam Shanklin had recaptured with the knight, and Josh Friedel played a very common move. When your opponent's king is castled, nicely hidden behind a fianchetto bishop, the bishop on g7 not only provides nice defense to the black king, it also acts as an active piece in the position attacking the pawn b2. Josh played a common move, bishop h6, in order to force a trade of bishops. Just to boldly point out the obvious, in case of a trade, black is really inviting a very dangerous piece over towards his king, and Sam certainly would not capture this pawn on e2, thinking he's just snabbing a pawn, because after knight g5 with the threat of queen takes h7 checkmate.
And then the hat really would be lucky.
And that would be a really lucky hat. That is not what Sam's going to do. No invitation. Don't invite your opponent's queen to come over for a visit near your king.
Now, we do have a special guest with us, a friend of mine, and a friend of many of the chess players. Actually, he's from Las Vegas. He works for Caesars. So Millionaire Chess Open, obviously, is also part of the Caesars umbrella, Planet Hollywood.
Absolutely.
Elliot Liu, one of the interesting things about Elliot is, he played in the U.S. Championship some years ago when it was San Diego, and he's natively from San Diego. And I think his friends are constantly making fun of him, but apparently there was an Elliot Liu Day proclaimed in San Diego because of his success there.
Sweet.
How many chess players have a day named after them?
Happened to me.
Well, no way.
Yeah, in
Where?
Seattle, Washington,
When?
of course.
What was the day? Your birthday?
No, it was Yasser Seirawan Chess Day, and I got proclamated by the Senate in Olympia as well.
Yasser Seirawan Day. All right.
Yeah.
Well, here he is. Elliot Liu, he's an FM, and he is with Maurice Ashley.
Thanks, Jen. With FM, Elliot Liu. First of all, thanks and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Elliot, Liu Day in San Diego. How was that? You were all of what, 16 years old?
I was 16, yeah.
How did that feel like?
It was the biggest surprise of my life to date, probably. It came out of nowhere, did not expect it, and as Yasser said, I mean, they give you this whole proclamation process, and you go into City Hall, and they read this thing in front of everybody, and yeah, that's what happened.
Any friends made fun of you after that?
Yeah, of course, they had to.
It was like the big shot, Mr. Elliot Liu. So you have a lot of friends here at the championships. Tell us a bit about how you've been following their progress.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm here to basically support them to begin with, but my main friends in the event are Alejandro Ramirez, Tatev Abrahamian, Alyssa Malakina, Mac Molnar. So I'm just here supporting them. I've always been following them. Alejandro had an amazing result last year, and yeah, so that's it.
Indeed. You've been looking at some of the games as well so far. Have you seen anything that's caught your attention?
So I guess currently in this round, the Akobe and Kamsky game is actually following a game between Boris Gelfand and Hikaru Nakamura. I forget exactly what year that was, and I forget the outcome also, but Ben and Robert were discussing it across the way.
Indeed, a heavyweight game for the championships, the way Akobian's going right now. You also mentioned that you've been studying the different scoring systems and how a different sort of scoring system, a soccer-style scoring system, would affect the standings in the championship.
Right. So a really interesting thing I realized was if you actually use the system where you get 3 points for a win, 1 for a draw, and 0 for a loss, like they've been experimenting with in a lot of the international events, there actually would not be a tie not only atop the leaderboard, but among the top 4 players. So if you do the 3-1-0 system, Alex Lenderman would actually be in clear first with 17 points. Virja Kobian would be in clear second with 16 points. Josh Friedel would be in clear third with 14 points, and actually Gada Kamsky would be in fourth with 13 points. So that would definitely mix things up a little bit. Now, is that fair? Who knows? But it's certainly interesting to see how that system would actually affect the results and maybe influence the style of play also.
Absolutely, because that system rewards wins.
Absolutely, yep.
And I guess as part of the Caesars family, you guys like to see winning and losing as opposed to all these draws.
That's what it's all about. Yep, absolutely.
I agree with you. The Millionaire Chess Open is going to be held at Planet Hollywood.
Very excited.
Organizing that. How's the Caesars family feeling about that?
We're all excited. I work directly with the property, seeing as how our entire organization, we own it. We own the property. I'm friends with the senior leaders at the property also, and we're excited to have it over in October. And I am not actually registered yet, but I might as well announce it now. I will be playing.
Oh, thank you, appreciate it.
So,
breaking news.
Breaking news, yeah. So I definitely will be playing. I hope it really generates the type of publicity and gets the amount of players that we hope to see. And it's right next door to where I live, actually, so it's very convenient.
Very convenient. Yeah. No airfare, no hotel.
Exactly.
What happens if you win, though? Do you have to return them to the winnings to be part of the Caesars family?
Interesting conflict of interest, right? Maybe my bonus goes out the window or something. I don't really know. But.
Indeed. Well, LEU-FM, thanks so much for joining us on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Back to you guys.
Thank you. Maurice Ashley with Elliott Liu.
Yeah, nice interview. In my proclamation day, so I had to go to the Senate Olympia just as I was explaining that they read you all this stuff, and so I made a small speech where I congratulated the Senate on their brilliant decision. I thought that was, I had to get in the last word. Let's see what has, I didn't realize that this was the position that we have between Akobian and Kamsky has actually been seen, and indeed one of the games of Hikaru Nakamura was played in this fashion. I'm not really too sure what it is that White is attracted to in this particular position. It's clear that White does want to play the move c2, c4. One consideration that Gada could have is to try to shut down that operation with the move b7, b5, and after a4, c4, trying, mouse slip, trying to play c4 anyway. And things could get a little bit opened like this. Again, the good news for White is that he does have a lot of pieces in play. Going back to the position, one of the things that I would like to do if I were black in this position is I'd like to play for the move e7, e5, and I'd probably play a move like queen d8, e7 to support this advance. White could stop the advance with knight e5, but then after a trade, I could play knight g4, kick out the bishop, and play e5 anyway. So still, all the play for in this game, all results are possible, but I do believe that Gada's
made a good choice.
Yeah, made a good choice in the opening, and he stands well.
So question, if Gada Kamsky has such great results with the Dutch, why don't you think he plays it more often?
I think he's suspicious of it. Just in his heart of hearts, he knows that he's taking a greater risk than when he plays the Slav. And he said it so many times himself. He said he loves playing the Slav. He likes the positions he gets, and he just feels that he's more comfortable in those positions. The problem that he knows with the Slav is if that white wants, he can really balance the position with the Slav, exchange Slav. Very, very hard to get winning chances as black in that particular choice by white. So that's why he's mixing it up with the Dutch
and
on
you know,
occasion.
Nakamura also mixes in a lot of Dutches here and there.
Yeah, but he plays it with the Leningrad system with the fianchetto as opposed to the Stonewall. And by the way, Hikaru's really been a trailblazer, a pioneer in that defense. Really brought a lot of new ideas and really even inspired many other players to play it as well. So
everybody's looking for something that they can play against D4.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
That gives you that activity.
Yeah, and gives you counterattacking opportunities. Yeah. I'm just looking at Lenderman's game again. We're still in the depths of theory. I was about to say I'm not that inspired by the move, Mac's move at G2, G3. Normally speaking, you're not so happy with white opening up this long diagonal. That once you've played the move G2, G3, that long diagonal for the light squared bishop of black becomes like a magnet for the bishop. Equally, once you put your pawn on G3, black does have ideas of H5 and H4 battering the G3 pawn. Far more common is, if you're going to play this particular system, play a move like H2,
Much
H3.
more natural, right?
Much more so. And also another way of defending this pawn on H2, not necessarily recommended. You can bring out your queen to H5, knight F6, drop back with your queen on H4, just trying to discourage black from castling kingside. But if you encourage him too much to castle queenside, he may well do so, and then your queen's not looking very clever on the H4 square. But G2, G3, not an inspired move by Mac. I don't like that move. Knight F6, C3 has been played, and now I think that a key decision here for Alex Lenderman, does he want to go in for a line with B7, B6, bishop B7, or bishop D7?
What would you prefer? I mean, we want to get that bishop to the long diagonal, but
Absolutely.
eventually bishop to D7 might lead to the same thing if we can remove the knight on D4.
Precisely. So if let me just put some moves on the board just to show how that might happen, if we were to get to a position like this, boy, it's not exactly the position I want. You could play E5 and bishop C6, getting the bishop on this diagonal. If we start right away with the move after C2, C3, if we start right away with the move B7, B6, we're for sure getting our bishop on the long diagonal without necessarily having to play the tempo E6, E5. So I would probably just play B7, B6 myself, put the bishop on B7, and feel very confident.
I like black's position.
Well, that's because it does look like a Sicilian, where somehow the E4 pawn has been removed for, say, the D6 pawn. And that usually is a trade that black is trying to achieve.
Right, exactly. And that G3 pawn leaves something to be desired. Now, we do have a sacrifice alert in Robson Ramirez.
Oh, wonderful.
Just a pawn, just a little guy.
I live for those little guys. Just a second. Ray Robson, Alejandro Ramirez. I was talking about a trap, and we see that bishop, knight G7 was played, bishop D2, A2, A3. Basically, Alejandro has not committed his king to the king side because he wants to be able to play after black castles, that H5, bishop takes G5 sacrifice. So A2, A3 is a feint. White wants to play B2, B4, and Ray just allowed it. Most players, and for very, very good reasons, play the move A7, A5, not permitting B2, B4.
Even though A5 does give you that kind of Swiss cheese feel.
Well,
with the square and B5. I know you like this position for white.
I do. I've played it most of my life, in fact. But I also do think, whether he likes it or not, weakening the D5 square, the move A5 in my experience it's a necessary one.
Necessary evil, huh?
Necessary evil. Bishop e6, b4, and Ray said, okay, gift me the pawn. All right, in this position, there are numerous approaches that white can take. The first is just kind of think about the position as a kind of a Benko gambit, where you've got these a7, pawns on a7 and b7 as nice little targets. One idea is, for example, after queen a4 check, here you've got a choice. You could stick your knight on c6. It's probably more common to imagine that the knight would go back.
Yeah, safer, because those knights are going to kind of get jammed up together.
Yeah, exactly. A little bit, a little bit safer. Then, for example, after castles, rook b1, we get this nice Benko gambit play that I alluded to. The pawns on b7 and a7 are constantly being targeted by white. And the other thing that you might do here as white is play the move rook b1, and to put immediate pressure, provoke the move a5 for just a moment. Let me just put this move on our position for just a moment. So imagine, let's say, a move as ridiculous as it looks, knight a2. Knight takes a2, queen a4 check, knight c6, queen takes a2. So now, again, it's looking like a Benko gambit situation, but I've provoked the move a5. And that's usually
not
good.
Yeah.
It's good for the first player in this particular case. So I do like white's compensation very much in either case of rook b1 or queen a4.
Although this is one of the few games in the tournament that's not likely to determine the champion.
No.
But it's still an interesting one that we'll keep our eye on.
Well, as Maurice was mentioning before we came on the show, we were just having a little fun imagining all the possibilities. And the one that Maurice discovered is that if every single result went as follows in the last two rounds, extraordinarily enough, we could have a six-way tie for first. And we don't even want to investigate what that might happen, because the odds of that, well, we'll ask the guy from Caesars, but it's probably 2,000 to 1.
Yeah, the playoff will be pretty messy in that case.
Yeah.
And will be long and fun. So.
Yes. And let's just see, a game we haven't followed that much. Alex Onishuk is having a very, very steady performance, got rocked with a loss that's very unexpected.
To Friedel yesterday,
yeah, in his experience, he was doing really well. If that result had been changed, well, Alex might have been one of the people we would be talking about. Danya also disappointed with the outcome of yesterday's games. Today, these two players with 4.5 points are playing each other. Just a pair of knights have been traded. Looks like a fairly balanced game, but that doesn't mean that there's not a lot of play as well.
Now, meanwhile, our tournament leader, Varuzhin Akobian, well, our tournament co-leader with Lenderman, he's just lost his bishop on d3. So Gary has played the maneuver knight b4 and knight takes d3. And now the structure of the position has changed a bit because white has recaptured with the c-pawn. So, we've been talking about exchanges and the pros and cons strategically. Mm-hmm. How do you feel about this exchange of knight for bishop?
I'm sure that VAR will be very, very pleased that the knight went on this little tour here. Back a moment ago, Gata played knight b4, a3. The knight captures on d3. Pawn captures d3. We're talking about white playing the move c2, c4, trying to get a share of the center. Now with the pawn capturing on, capture on d3, what white is trying to do is control these two squares, the dark squares in the center of the board, d4 and e5. VAR is this is a very comfortable position for VAR. I would expect him to play moves like rook c1, knight e5, knight d5. And the light squared bishop, I like the two bishops as well, but this is not a position where the light squared bishop really shines, and I think that Gata's chances of winning this exact position really took a nosedive. I don't like that decision.
You don't like that
I don't like
kind
that
of
decision.
maneuver at all?
No, I don't. And by the way, just in that game with Robson, Ramirez did play the move rook b1, a7, a5 was played. And again, I'm not saying that knight a2 is the only move, but I just wanted to say once again that knight a2, knight takes a2, queen a4 check is the type of position why I like this pawn sacrifice for white. I feel that strategically it's very easy for white to play. This pawn on b7 is weak, this bishop on g2 standing in ambush. White's play is castles, rook b5, rook b1, double and treble on against the b7 pawn, and black is thrown on the defensive.
That's right. And how are we doing with Lenderman?
Yes.
And,
they're still in the early
still in the
throes.
early stage. We were talking about this move g3, not liking it, and Lenderman, has he made a move? So
yes. After g3, knight f6, came castles.
You were debating the pros and cons of b6 and bishop d7, but instead he played bishop d7, didn't he?
No, he castled in this moment. That was his move, and I'm...
Oh, there's a couple more moves there.
Right, and again, if we
you
had,
wanted to keep the option open of h5. That's why you didn't even like castling.
Yes, well, several things. I wanted to keep the option of castles long, castles short, and even just keeping it unclear and not necessarily committing myself with the move castle. So I thought that this would have been a more enterprising idea for Alex. He didn't choose this line. Instead, he went for, let us say, solid chess. He castled bishop g5. He did not want to see the doubling of his pawns on the king side. Alex dropped back with the move bishop e7, protecting his knight and basically saying, okay, I've got a solid position. This particular position, by the way, I must say, I have a slight preference for white.
So it's really gone topsy-turvy here for you.
A little bit, yeah. And
so are you still trying to play the move b6? I mean, the thing is, when the bishop was on d6, b5 would have led to a possibility of bishop takes b5.
Correct.
Although I don't know if that would have been that great anyway after
Right.
bishop takes g3.
Right.
Whereas now that's not in the position, but it still doesn't look like a great move because it could become a target unless you can meet a4 with potential b4. So b6 or b5, what would you pick? Or neither?
Well, probably neither, because at the moment I'm a little bit concerned that if I played the move b7, b6, or b7, b5, weakening the square only because of the move bishop f4. When the black bishop was on d6, I didn't have to worry about bishop f4. Now the queen is actually, it's a rather awkward hit, let us say. For example, bishop d6 loses a pawn, a nifty little tactic that we all should know about. The old discovered check. Black's queen unprotected, black's king is in a check, white wins black's queen. So after a move like bishop b7, b6, bishop f4, if you play a move like queen d7, for example, looks like a very normal, natural move. I have a different type of cheapo in the position. I'll pull my bishop back, so I want to go bishop g2. If you go bishop b7, I want to go knight f5. And thanks to my rook on e7, my rook on e1 attacking the e7 bishop, this works out favorably for white.
Yes, we can grovel on and not actually lose any material, but you losing that bishop on e7.
Yeah, you lose the two bishops. It's a pull. It's a pull for white. So at the moment, Alex has a solid position. So does Molnar. We'll see how that game develops.
We have a question from James Backley. He asks to the hashtag US Chess Champs, what book had the most lasting impression for you when you began to learn how to play chess, Yasser? Now, I know the answer in advance. It's got to be My System, right?
No, not even close.
We just have a little bit of a running joke. Yasser's not, for those of you who haven't listened to every show of ours, shame on you, first of all.
Right.
Secondly, Yasser's not the biggest fan of Nimzovich.
Not even close. Turgid is repulsive, are words that come to mind. No, the really, really wonderful books, and they are truly classics. I mean, those were books I read once and twice and thrice, and with each time that I was reading them, I was gaining 100 points and getting more insights than when I originally read them. And I speak of the 2-volume collection of the best games of Alexander Alekhine.
All right.
Those 2 books were just amazing for me. And again, I guess I started reading them when I was like 1400, and it's like, wow, just whole new worlds opened up to me. Then I was about maybe 1800, bored, had nothing to do, read them again. I had the feeling I was reading them for the first time because I really had this idea that I saw more, I understood more. Then I read them again as maybe an expert master. And I go, did I ever read these books before? I mean, it's just amazing how much was in those books.
And it's so hard to read a chess book. It takes so long.
Right.
Because every page is so dense.
Yeah, but in his particular case, the variations that he was showing, it was just wild. Another book that had from that experience, I really, really like games collections books. I really looked for them.
You liked Mikhail Tal's as well?
Oh, just over that.
I think that was Maurice's favorite.
My 2 favorite.
No? Yeah, I remember you being asked this question in another broadcast, and you liked Mikhail Tal, right?
Totally loved Mikhail Tal. I remember my friend Leon Monroe and I back in Brooklyn, back in the day, bringing back memories when we would sit down and we look over Tal games, and we saw these sacrifices that were just miracles. The guy's just donating pieces. Like anytime he felt like it. I remember later reading, he said, a funny joke, he said, according to Latvian rules, knights can't go backwards. So if you attack my knight, I'm just going to have to sack it. And so that's why he'd always put his knights on D5, B5, E6,
F5.
F5, just majestic sacrifices, like just entering a fairy tale almost when you went over Tal's games. But I also remember the 2-volume collection of Alekhine's Yasser, and they made a very deep impression as well. This guy was a beast, just ripping people apart in his games, and those were absolutely 2 of my favorite players coming up.
Well, first of all, Michael Tal, one of my favorite authors, just wonderful authors.
Oh yeah, very funny guy.
His 1960 book on his World Championship match with Michael Botvinnik is basically the best chess book ever. Not just in the top 10, and not just in the top 5, and not just in the top 3, but 1960 is just a phenomenal book. If you have not read that book, you cannot claim yourself to be a chess player. My 60 Memorable Games by Bobby Fischer, the Paul Carrez
Every
collection.
American must have read that book.
Oh, it's just fantastic. Bobby was just great. And
now the Dvoretsky books are very popular. I used to read those books. I mean, they're very difficult.
Very, very difficult.
It kind of gives you a sense of a better version of yourself, rather.
Okay.
Because it kind of, the endgame book's not quite as complicated. It seems like that can reach all levels.
Right.
The endgame manual.
Yeah, but it was, of all the books I've ever read, it was the games collection books.
Those are the ones that you love.
I love.
Any new ones? So My Great Predecessors, you must love that.
Oh, wonderful.
Speaking
kudos
of our
to Gary
upcoming
Kasparov.
guest. And I believe I've heard Magnus Carlsen say in an interview that he used to pore over those books, and that one of the things he disagrees with a lot of members of the modern generation is that classics aren't important.
Right.
So he thinks classics are important.
And
he got some of his introduction to that via Gary.
And just a quick correction, basically he said the book that really made a big impression on him was the game collection of Vladimir Kramnik. Oh. That Vladimir Kramnik's book of best games. Magnus Carlsen said that book just like, wow, that opened up his eyes. So he was putting Vladimir Kramnik really, really high. A wonderful compliment to Vladimir, and doubtlessly true. It was a great book too. Again, game collections, I love them. Chess players are running after the latest opening book. Ridiculous, ridiculous waste of your money. Game collections are fantastic.
And if I may add another game collection, actually 2, I remember reading over Botvinnik's games collections. And now another one is popping in my head as well. Petrosian, of all people. I consider myself a more sacrificial kind of dynamic player. But boy, Petrosian taught me so much about positional chess. I loved going over his games, just the nuances, the fine nuances in his best games collection. And finally, no book really has the kind of dynamism, well, certainly Alekhine's and Tal's, but in a more modern style than The Test of Time by Gary Kasparov. That one I had dog-eared and actually got him to sign it too. So that's like one of my treasured books in my collection. Speaking of Gary coming up, he was definitely one of my heroes watching his style of play.
I actually went to a book signing with Gary Kasparov and My Great Predecessors, and my copy of, I guess it was volume 1 or 2, it was very There were some coffee stains.
Used, shall we say.
I was a little embarrassed. And he was like, wow, you read it.
No, he was pleased.
Exactly.
I went to a super national tournament in Nashville, and I was signing for children and young adults. And one little boy, he must have been 6, 7, he brought me this play-winning chess copy. I am telling you, I've never seen a book in worse shape in my life. I mean, his dog must have been chewing on this book. And I signed the book, and he walked away with a smile, and his dad came up to me and he said, you know, he's read that book 1,000,000 times. I said, it sure looked like it. I mean, it feels good as an author to see your book, you know, mangled, because, you know, it's not just sitting on a shelf doing nothing. So that was a very good feeling.
I think my worst experience as signing somebody's copy of Chess Bitch, Women in the Ultimate Intellectual Sport, that was my first book. They gave it to me and I opened it up to sign it, and it said to the Marshall, it said to the library,
right.
Thank you for hosting my book event. So they were trying to get me to re-sign a book that they had gotten from a library.
Oh man.
I just thought it was funny.
Very cool, very cool.
And let's so whoever asked that question,
thank you for
that certainly gave us a lot of material.
That's gotta win a diamond membership, doesn't it? Come on, you know, chess.com diamond membership.
We got a lot of mileage out of that.
Yeah.
Chess players love.
We love talking about books too, by the way, and all the books we read and had big influences in our lives.
And one thing that really struck me as a writer, writing is a big passion of mine, is that when Daniel Naroditsky's mom came on the show and was interviewed by Maurice on Mother's Day, she said that her son, who's just a magnificent chess player but also a very talented writer, asked when he was really young, how do I become an author?
Right.
And I just think that a lot of people have a passion for the chess book and the writing.
Oh, definitely, definitely.
And a lot of people who don't even study writing just because they read so many chess books, they become good writers. Like Bobby Fischer was a fantastic writer, and you know, he pretty much just studied chess, right?
Right.
But that
exactly.
was enough.
That was enough. That was enough. But the thing I really liked about Bobby's writing is he didn't couch things in niceties. He was very direct. He was just very direct.
Right,
a bad move.
anyway.
This just is a bad move. You know, it should never have been considered. I can't believe this. You know. It's like, damn.
So, Nimzovich, no niceties, no flowery language, just direct Hemingway-esque prose, right?
Yes, exactly.
We've got Maurice for some news on Okogie and Kansky, our big battle of the day.
By the way, I loved Nimzovich. Sorry, Yaz, but I thought that book was very illuminating. But something that I'm totally befuddled by is the situation in the Okogie and Kamsky game. Kamsky played this maneuver, knight to b4, just back up for a second, after knight e2, knight to b4, chasing this bishop, and then the move a3 by Okogie saying, if you want it, take it. Kamsky said, I did want it, and then after bishop to d7, rook to c1, he's been sitting here thinking about this position for quite some time because he has only 32 minutes left on his clock. Now I wonder if I have that wrong, because only 12 moves have been played. He has to make 28 moves from this position with 32 minutes, basically a minute, little over a minute a move with the 30-second increment to be sure, but what is going on this early in the game? Meantime, Okogie started with 1 hour and 30 minutes on his clock. He now has 1 hour and 25 minutes and 28 seconds. That means he's played all his moves in less than 5 minutes. Now, that's not a big shock, but the shock is how much time Kamsky has spent getting this position in the opening. What is he thinking about? Well, now it looks like he has moves, but is this clock time right? Jen, please check for me because it looks crazy.
Yeah, it looks right to me.
Wow.
I mean, 1 and 18 for Varusian Okogie and Gary Kasparov, 38 minutes and 59 seconds.
That's just bizarre, right? Right out of the opening, 12 moves in, he's already in some kind of time pressure. Not really, right? You don't feel it just yet, but you make 5 or 6 moves and all of a sudden you're looking at your clock and how come I only have 25 minutes left? And then another 5 moves and suddenly you're at 12, 15 minutes. It doesn't seem to make any sense that he's played this way.
A huge misuse of his clock, no question about it. And I think got a sense that something went wrong. Something just went wrong, seriously. If we go back to this position, when he played this maneuver, knight b4, to capture this bishop on d3, he probably had a specific line in mind. And as he got closer and closer to this position, he suddenly realized, oh dear, there were issues with the line he had prepared. Bishop d7, rook c1. Already we can see troubles are brewing for black, and they're very, very quick. Like, for example, if the bishop had dropped back, bishop c7, bishop d6 would have been a positional disaster. All of these wonderful dark squares, the knights are ready to jump, rook is coming to the c-file, so he could have lost the game with the move bishop c5. He did play the move rook c1, rook c8, by the way, and again, I'm just thinking that maybe he cracked and he missed moves like either knight e5, queen b3, knight d4. All of these moves are so easy and so natural for VAR to play.
So uncharacteristic positional slip-up from Gary Kasparov.
Big time.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what Kasparov thinks about that. And we are going to be back after the break with the legendary Gary Kasparov. So definitely don't go away. And we'll be back for more from the U.S. Championship and U.S. Women's here in St. Louis. Hello and welcome back to our 2014 U.S. Chess Championship coverage here in St. Louis. According to Mark Twick, that Fisher-Fuller puzzle was the easiest one that we've had on U.S. Chess Champs coverage so far, so perhaps you had a chance to solve the discovered attack knight f6 check and also get yourself something to eat while we await our exciting interview. We have Gary Kasparov, former world champion and FIDE presidential candidate, and he is with Grandmaster Maurice Ashley via Skype. He's actually in New York City at the moment.
Thanks, Jen. We do have Gary Kasparov on the show. First of all, you could add a lot of plaudits to his title, of course. He has done so much for chess in so many roles, including the Kasparov Chess Foundation, his work as an author, a commentator, definitely unparalleled in the history of chess, his scope. And we'd like to welcome Gary Kasparov. Welcome to the show.
Okay, thanks. Actually, Maurice, you're also in New York, huh?
I am from New York. Are you in New York right now?
Yeah, no, you are now in New York? Yeah, I'm in New York now, of course.
I'm actually in St. Louis right now.
St. Louis, okay. Fine.
Yes, I'm at the championships at the moment. First of all, Gary, every time I look on ChessBase, I see you flying all over the world. I mean, a presidential campaign is usually in one country. Even sports stars travel only in one country, but your frequent flyer miles must be crazy. You're all over the place. Tell us about your work trying to be president of the International Chess Federation.
Yeah, I have to tell you that, every morning I wake up, first 30 seconds I'm spending to understand where I am. So that's to figure it out, that's already a big accomplishment. So I had just the last campaign tour, started in New York, ended in New York, and included 4 continents, Africa, Asia, Australia, and Europe. That was tough. So 13 countries in 29 days. But it's a great experience because I can hear stories firsthand. I can learn about the chess development, or actually lack of chess development in most of the quarters in the world, and I can talk to people. So it's just at the end of the day, if we want to change the world of chess, we want to find energetic people on the ground that are willing to execute this change. I believe that the future of the game of chess is not a vertically integrated system with people sitting in New York, Moscow, Brussels, Athens, everywhere and telling others what to do, but more like the giant social network. And it means that we need people on the ground, we need energy from the ground, we need fresh ideas of how to organize our world.
Gary, one of our viewers or Twitter followers asked, what specifically in the United States do you feel should be done in order to change chess here in this country where it's not as popular as in other parts of the world?
No, look, it's this, when you say it's not popular, naturally we are, talking about, the number of people who are registered in the Federation. But this number is minuscule compared to the number of people who are playing chess, either on internet, say on chess.com, or, for fun. And my idea is that, as a FIDE president, would be just to introduce what I call universal rating system, to make sure that every game played will be counted within one rating system, with different ratio for classical, rapid, and blitz games, but to make sure that federations will be able to attract hundreds of thousands or millions of people who I think will be quite happy to join the same rating system as Magnus Carlsen. And by having these numbers, we can actually demonstrate that chess is popular. Chess is not the game that is played in dark corners in a cafe, but actually it could present numbers that will be attractive to any advertiser.
Gary, you spoke about Magnus Carlsen just now. One of our listeners also wanted to know what your opinion was of this great champion. I mean, certainly a young star. You've worked with him, as a matter of fact. What are your thoughts about Magnus?
Look, Magnus is great. So it's if you may call a chess player an asset, this is the best asset in recent years that chess could have. And Magnus is very media friendly. I mean, I'm not talking about his outstanding chess abilities, because as we could see it, he plays chess, great chess, but also his fighting spirit. I mean, his just willingness to concentrate and to push, to the limits, in every game. I think it gained reputation that is very important, not only for him as a world champion, but also for the sport he represents. And I believe that as a FIDE president, I couldn't have a better world champion to work with me to make sure that the game of chess will reach the heights it deserves to be.
Gary, I don't know if you have a chance or had a chance to look at some of the games from the championship. Currently, Akobian is tied for first, playing against Gary Kasparov.
Okay, actually, I'm looking, and as we speak, I'm looking at the games.
Oh, so please give us your insight into that particular game. Kamsky seems to be in some time pressure as we speak. He took a bishop on d3 earlier in the game. We weren't sure that was a wise decision. What are your thoughts on this position?
White is clearly better. I mean, I believe in traditional chess values. So having the big hole on e5, it counts for something. And two bishops here are not as important because they do not have much to do. And White also has pawn on d3, which protects e4 square, which limits black's knight. So and d4 square also could be used by the knight. So probably that's one of the options now, maybe to either to play now knight d4 or to play knight e5 or to play rook c3. So there are many, in my view, White can press with no risk, and it's highly unpleasant position. I think the reason Kamsky spends so much time, he understands that White can do whatever without any risk.
Indeed, an unpleasant position for him. We've seen a lot of young players here at the championships doing quite well. We know you do a lot of work with young players as well. Tell us about that, the Young Rising Stars program that you've developed.
Oh, yeah, we have been working, thanks to support from St. Louis Chess Club. The Kasparov Chess Foundation has been involved in supporting young chess players, and I'm doing, twice a year regular sessions with them. Plus, we have our, coaches, like Sasha Chernin, working with them on a regular basis. And I think we had results. So it's just to mention name Sam Sivian, so he's so successful, made grandmaster norms, and just a matter of time, I believe, and rating for him just to acquire a title, and quite impressive. Also, I think Caden Trough hasn't spoken his final word, and we have few other young guys who are just doing well. So I'm quite cautiously optimistic about the success of U.S. chess, because we saw enough young players joining the pack, and lately the U.S. won number of medals in World Under-18 Championships. So recently the gold and silver under-10. Went to this country, and that's a clear demonstration that the talent is available elsewhere. It's just about your desire and your determination to find it.
Finally, Gary, you are running for FIDE president. The current incumbent has been there for a lot of years. Many people want to know, what do you think about your chances to win this time around, and what are you going to offer that makes it different?
Look, anything will be different after 19 years of one person in the office. Yeah, but it's the problem is that even being there 19 years, the current team has nothing to offer, and they don't even bother to offer anything. So it's all negative campaigning without even trying to address the important issues, and just all empty promises that people heard in 2006, especially 2010. So I build a network of Kasparov Chess Foundations around the world. So it's here in America, it's in Europe, in Brussels, in Africa, in Johannesburg, in Asia Pacific, in Singapore, and recently one was opened in Mexico City for Ibero-American. We have been working quite aggressively in pushing chess into education, and we succeeded. We had quite considerable progress made everywhere, but especially in Africa, where we have numerous countries where our programs have been already implemented on the ground. And I succeeded in raising corporate funding and also private donations to make sure that these programs can be can be supported. I also have a very clear vision of reforming the world of chess. As I already mentioned, just to turn it from the, sort of vertical into the horizontal structure, a giant social network that will include components as education, as higher technology, and the social networking element itself. And I think that, at the end of the day, the game of chess needs sponsorship, badly needs sponsorship. There are no corporate sponsors, and the very fact that Match Carlsen Anand was not yet awarded any sponsorship just shows better than anything else total incapability of FIDE management to work with the corporate world.
Well, Gary Kasparov, thank you so much for joining us on the show. 15 years champion, many tournaments won, one of the greatest players of all time, and now running for FIDE president. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Okay, bye-bye.
Jen and Yaz, one of the greatest ever, no question about it. You can go over his games over and over again and get great joy from the dynamic style that he showed as a player, which he's now showing as a potential candidate or a candidate for the president of the International Chess Federation. Back to you guys.
That's right, and that election is going to be upon us soon.
August during the Chess Olympiad in Tromsø, Norway. That will be where the election takes place, and it'll be exciting to see how Gary fares in this election.
That's right, and we've also gotten some questions about the Olympic team. Somebody asked, what is our Olympic team going to be composed of?
Hikaru Nakamura will lead the team. Gary Kasparov will be our second board. Our third board will likely be Alexander Onishuk. Some issues regarding Timur Gariev. He may not have his travel documents in time. Therefore, we would expect Varuzhin Akobian to be our fourth player. And our fifth player is up for grabs: Ray Robson, Sam Shanklin, Alex Lenderman, myself, but I've taken myself out of contention to be the fifth board. However, if Alex Lenderman wins the U.S. championship, and that's a secondary story, or Josh Friedel, those players would automatically be given birth to the team. They will be team members. I'm looking at the game between Akobian, our co-leader, with Gary Kasparov, and I'm mesmerized by the position because just a moment ago, I really thought that Varuzhin had an opportunity here. He could have played the enterprising move Queen B3, a move earlier, going after the pawn on B7. I suspect that he decided not to do this because of some complications that may have occurred after castles, offering the pawn queen takes b7, bishop b5. Notice that white's queen is trapped, and if black could play the move rook on f8 to f7, trapping the queen, black would be winning. Maybe this dissuaded Var from playing the line, but I was pursuing it still with the move knight g5, not only preventing rook f7, but also threatening knight takes e6, and this simply looked very, very good for white to my eyes. So I thought that queen b3 was a strong move, and if black had done something different, like for example queen b6, then I thought trading queens and dropping the bishop in on the d6 square, followed by knight e5, was going to place black in really great positional difficulties. So I thought that that was a severe test for Gada. Queen b3. Queen d2 was Var's move, and I have seen from our webcams that more moves have been played. And I was just about to say that in this position, the position that, before I started talking about the previous possibility, what we have here is this bishop on f4 by white that's not doing too much, whereas this bishop on c5 can cover some dark squares. So I was about to suggest a swapping operation where Var could play rook takes c5, rook takes c5, bishop d6, which is precisely what happened. Going after white will win back his exchange, but what will be left are these two very weak dark squares in the middle of the board, d4 and e5. If white could, let's just make a move for black for a moment, b7, b6, just as a move. If white could establish authority with knight e5, followed by f4, followed by knight d4, Gata would be in the type of positional bind that he's famous for getting his opponents in, not being victimized by a really nice dark square bind. So I think that Varugian Akobian, and also if you toss in the times as well, is more than happy with the outcome of the opening in this game.
And now there's been big trades going on in another one of our key games today as well, or an offering for a trade, not yet a trade, but in our game Molnar-Lenderman, where Lenderman,
our other co-leader,
is also tied for the lead with Varugian Akobian.
And let's just.
You were starting to like white. You started out by liking black, then you were starting to like white because you didn't love Lenderman's kind of slow treatment with bishop to e7. But now there's an offer of queen trades on the board.
Queen f3 was played, queen c5.
The queen is angry.
A little tickle over on the bishop over here. The bishop was defended with move h4. I'm not 100% sure I'm happy about that, but okay. Bishop e3, threatening discoveries against the queen. And then came queen d5, and it just looks like a very nice Sicilian setup for black. I think that Lenderman's doing very well, in fact.
So you like black again now?
Yeah,
I think white might have slipped somewhere.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that you don't like the move h4 because we've been lauding this move in a lot of other positions.
In other positions.
But you know, of course, one of the problems is that it could turn out to be more of a weakness than a strength since there's no real target with that pawn on h4.
That's absolutely, and the square g4 is it could be potentially used by black as well. But that's not the real issue. The real issue is if we end up doing something like a queen swap, queen takes d5, knight takes d5, our bishop ends up having to drop back. I really don't like allowing black the opportunity of capturing the bishop. If we drop our bishop back, it looks to me like with this very nice knight sitting here parked in the middle of the board, move like bishop f6, it's a very comfortable position for black. I don't see any issues, any reason why Mac would be pleased with this position. Also, you look at the pawn on h4 and you go, okay, what exactly does it do there? Not much of anything, I'm afraid. It's not really an aggressive attacking move.
Now, do you think that a draw is a positive result for Lenderman in this game?
No, actually, just quite the opposite. I think that Lenderman has to realize he's in a situation where he's got the potential, I mean, it's just in his grasp of capturing the national title, with it not only the prize fund, all the accolades, the rewards of being a U.S. champion, but also being a member of the Olympic team. And he's playing a player in the field who, sorry to say, is one of the tail enders. So real opportunity, despite the fact that he's black. I think that his idea coming into this game is that a win is needed.
Well, he does play Varugian Akobian in the final round. Could have scripted that better.
Also, once again.
He will be white, though, so that game is just going to be a real thriller.
Absolutely
I can't wait to see
huge.
what happens in that game.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Kamsky playing Friedel. So basically, we've got
our tournament leaders all playing one another
in the final round. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. And I was just looking at the game between Josh and Sam as well. That looked to be a pretty even fight going on there.
So Josh Friedel, if he draws this game, will have to play with the win against Gata with black. Not a fun task, but Gata will probably be playing for a win as well, and maybe will take more risk than usual.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I always felt that whenever I was in a situation playing for first in the U.S. Championship, I just felt not a moral obligation to myself or to the game. I just said, listen, you know, like I've been given this opportunity to play for a national championship. I've got to give it my absolute best. And I really didn't care if I was black or white. Truly, in those situations, I just wasn't, you know, the idea of winning the national championship was it was paramount in my mind.
Right, right. You would worry about it if your opponent tried to play a super draw line, then it might occur to you. But before the game, you were thinking
win, win, win.
And it seems like 7.5 is going to win this championship. What do you think?
Yeah, that's huge.
7.5 is going to win clear.
Yeah, that sounds
Playoff
really
for
good.
7.
Yeah, no, we were just talking about a 6-way tie at 6.5. So I think 7.5.
Somebody's going to get 7 points, I think.
Well, yeah, somebody's going to get 7 points. That might win clear for us, but I really do suspect that we're going to see playoffs in both events: the women's championships. We know the women have a rest day today, of course, and in the overall championship.
Perhaps, although I don't know if Lenderman and Akobian say they both draw today,
right?
And then they play each other 6.5 each. They have the chance to get that 7.5 point score, which will probably just win clear.
Yeah,
because they're playing each other.
Precisely.
If they don't draw the game,
they could decide it amongst themselves. Yeah, and the prophetic Gary Kasparov, we may be seeing a new U.S. champion this year.
We might indeed. Yeah. Anybody want to wager what their odds are on that? Maurice Ashley, what do you have for us on Akobian and Kasparov?
Well, looking at this position, I'm very surprised by the way Akobian handled himself here, because it seems as though he's just basically gifting Gary Kasparov the kind of position Gary likes. Before, we had this position here in the game, and there's so many moves that he could play now. He could play for the c file with rook c3. He could play for the e5 square. But he decided that at this moment, the best thing to do would be to play for the weakness of this bishop and make it into a pure superiority of minor pieces. So he sacrificed here, played the move bishop d6, rook drop back to c8, takes, and then rook to c1. Now, he's essentially saying this piece is going to be the worst piece against these knights. That seems odd to me as being enough to beat Gary Kasparov. You imagine that he can make Gary suffer for a long time with his dark square weakness, but if he's just going to play on just the technique of this bishop, that's super refined chess against a player like Gary. Now, naturally, Gary likes having this position himself with the white pieces, knowing that he has very little chance of possibly winning might disturb Gary Kasparov in this position, because he just knows he's worse. He just knows, I'm clearly worse, and this guy's got all to play for. How do I make something of this position? Because a draw really puts a damper on his chances of repeating as champion. So maybe that's what Akobian knows. He's played Kasparov before. He might know exactly who he's playing against. No risk. Just play for the small edge and see if you can make this guy maybe push a little bit harder and then get a chance to win against him. Or if not, you just run out of there with a good draw. Guys?
Well, I recall a comment that Magnus Carlsen made about a particular game that he was playing, where he said, there's only 2 results possible. Either I win or a draw, and that is a success in and of itself. And that's the way Akobian certainly approached this game, saying, listen, if I could get a win or a draw, not lose, it's great. So not a big surprise about the move rook c1, but without that move rook c1, I was just going to say that Black's control of the c-file is wonderful. It's an open c-file, but all the business squares on the c-file are currently controlled. I would have, personally, I would have just jumped with my knight to e5, brought my other knight to f4, and to d4, pardon me. From d4, the knight on d4 would control the c2 square, all the business squares again being covered, and then with a move f2, f4, cement my control over the center and keep that rook trade in reserve. You know, you never know, you know, but knight e5 would have been my choice. Akobian, to quote Maurice, ultra solid with his choice, rook c1, and the pieces that are coming off the board, more importantly, the piece that is remaining on the board is the light squared bishop, and that will be the the piece that Akobian wants to dominate.
By the way, guys, if I may add to what you're saying,
please.
My first move, like yours, was absolutely knight to e5. It's like, that's why you traded off the dark squared bishops, was to dominate. When I threw it into the computer, it came up with this crazy idea. First, let me get the board right. Knight e5, and it came up with this nutty idea. What if we sack a piece? Which, of course, shocked me. But his point is, after knight takes on d7, queen to d6, threatening mate in 1 because the rook is still on f1, and threatening the knight as well, forcing you to play